Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yep, I do. Thanks for reminding me of that. So I'm not going to turn the camera on. Andrew and I spoke yesterday, and we think maybe the screen size may have changed a little bit when you see my ugly face in the morning. So I won't scare anybody this morning, but uh, so I'm going to leave that off. And then at the end of the session, when we get ready to answer questions and stuff, I'll pop in and say hello if we need to do that or whatever. But we're going to talk about the XP16 this morning. It's our two-stage heat pump. Let me clip the screen here. Here we go. All right, so I keep talking about these two apps that everyone needs, and again, I won't stay on them very long because I know you guys are kind of new, but just make sure that we stay on top of this. Lennox Pros, and I think everyone inside the company needs this app. I mean, it has everything that you might need from install, sales, all the way up to technical service manuals. That's one thing when we get the service team on board. I want to make sure they understand that the manuals that come with the equipment is a basic installation manual. It's got some stuff in it, and even there's times when it won't have everything that the install team needs, right? So like maybe dip switch settings and things like that, we're implementing to put that back in. But because we've got a strong app in the marketplace, a lot of our paper documents just kind of went by the wayside. But a lot of us FTCs has really worked hard and encouraged a corporate office there to put that back in the literature because we feel like the install team needs that. So we're working hard to get that done as well. The next app we got is Go to Assist See It, and I kind of just screenshotted this so we can let everybody see what the logo looks like when you go out and look at the App Store. This is our kind of our FaceTime. The easiest way I explain it's more like a Skype or a FaceTime video type deal. But what it does is it allows me to see the technician in the field through his camera. I can actually snap screenshots on my end, draw on it, put circles on it, highlight it, whatever I need to do, and send it back to the technicians. And I can say, okay, test here and here, give me a measurement from here. This is what I'm really talking about, that type of thing. So it really helps a whole lot. If you've ever helped any of your coworkers and stuff work through stuff, it means a lot to be able to see what they see. I know it really enhances what I do. Sometimes I have a vision in my head what you're actually looking at, and what I'm thinking you're looking at, and what you're actually seeing, maybe two different things. It has happened in the past when I was on the dealer side that the manufacturer made a change in maybe the type of defrost board or something that they're using, or a different color wire. All of a sudden, it got changed, and I'm like, I don't know what color that is. What are you talking about? And they're like, it's some purple wire that's new here. I've never seen it before, and so then you get to see what it is. So that helps a whole lot. And so when you get a chance, it's always good to download this for your team. And then if we have to get on with each other, we can do that. We can schedule appointments. I like to do that as well. If you know you're going to a job that you might have some challenges with, when the service call is set up, give me an email, shoot me a text, and say, hey, I'm going out Thursday, at 10 o'clock. Do you have anything going on? And I'll let you know, if I'm teaching or whatever, and I'll make every arrangement to try to be there for that situation. Also, if you call corporate headquarters, the 1-800 number, and have to talk to those guys from afar, they have this same program. That's actually where it originated from, allowing those guys in Dallas, Texas, to actually see what's going on in Huntsville, Alabama. So be sure to let them know, hey, I've got the Go to Assist See It app on my phone, if that helps. And they'll used to say, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's get connected, and they'll send you a link, and they can send you a text message or an email, and just within a few seconds, you're on with each other. So, all right, so we're going to move on. We're going to talk about, again, the XP16 this morning. This is our Lennox Elite series. It's a little bit different looking cabinet than the ML series that we have, the Merit line. It's a really nice looking cabinet, and this is really, in my opinion, where most contractors are starting with their presentation for replacement type equipment. It's not necessarily something that we see in new construction. It does come with a two-stage compressor. It's 410A, and we'll talk about some other things about this equipment as well. 10-year registered warranty to the original homeowner. Standard widths across our product line with all of our type of systems here. The biggest feature in here is the width. You know, we try to keep that under 36 inches so we can fit through a 3-foot gate. Smart hinge technology. This is available on all of our Elite Series product. It opens up very easily that you can get to the coils and service them. This is very good for maintenance contract customers and things like that. It's a great feature that I really liked a lot, and I have found that it's very easy to go in there and clean and service the coil and keep that system running the way it should be. So that's a selling feature too that I would discuss about the ease of getting in and out of that system. So many maybe if your competitors come in here and they're just going to spray right through the louvers and things like that, and you know, that'll get it somewhat clean, but not the way that a professional tune-up should be done. So that's something that I would utilize as well. All right, so we talk about our compressor quite a bit, but we utilize the Copeland Scroll Ultratech 2-stage compressor. It's a very robust compressor. It's been around for a long time. We've had very good success with it overall. Haven't really had any issues with it to amount to anything. And the biggest feature that we have on here is all of these units come with a crankcase heater. So the 16 SEER and up is all going to have crankcase heaters on there, and that's to keep the sump warm when we're in that low stage type thing for the heat pump. So anything that we have modulating compressor and or 2-stage product, you know, you're going to find crankcase heaters on most manufacturers, and that's to keep that oil warm when we're running at low capacity in the compressor itself. It's not generating enough heat to keep everything going. Standard PSC motors on the outside units currently. We're in the process of probably changing that. It'll be more of a ECM type motor, but at this moment on the XP16, you're going to see that up to about a 5-ton. When we get to the 5-ton, then we'll change over to an ECM type motor with pulse width modulation and no run capacitor on it. And this currently is on the 5-ton only. Okay, just like the 20 and 25 SEER, we do use a muffler, discharge muffler to keep the noise down on the compressor. And we use both indoor and outdoor expansion valves on this equipment. Factory installed filter dryers. Okay, I like to bring this up because I think it's very important. The heat pumps are going to come factory installed, and then on the air conditioners, we're going to send them with you to install in the liquid line with the original install. One thing to please note: anytime that you break into a 410A system, whether it's mine or anybody else's, please change these out. Okay, they need to be replaced. I don't care if you just go in it and it's got a leak in it. And you pull the system down and recharge it, they need to be replaced. This is one of the things I think gets overlooked when you're doing repairs. You know, if we're within the first year and we have some kind of failure, give me a call. We'll discuss it, have a conversation about it. But outside of that, you know, when you're charging a customer for labor to make a repair and the parts are covered by us, figure in a filter dryer for this. I don't know how many times I run across that I get multiple component failures. And the next question out of my mouth is that if I drove up to the site right now, am I going to see something other than a factory dryer on this system? You know, and that kind of lets me know what the dealer is doing. Are they doing it correctly or not? All right, so the XP16, we kind of discussed this a little bit the other day, defrost on demand type of system, where it'll only go into defrost as needed. And I won't take a whole lot of time on this. This is where your outdoor ambient coil temperature discharge and ambient coil temperature is located at on the side of this terminal. It's a plug that has all of them tied in together. And we'll talk a little bit about in the service class of, you know, how that functions a little more detail, because it kind of has an algorithm, kind of like a nest. It starts accumulating runtime, how long it takes to defrost and things like that. The P5 jumper is available on both our basic time and temperature board and also on the defrost board. It comes stock in place, the jumper does, and that allows it to run a quiet shift type operation during defrost, which means the outdoor fan and the compressor have a 30-second delay in off times and on times to kind of keep that from happening all at one time, that noise from defrost. You have your O inputs and Y2 and Y1. High pressure, low pressure, and then here's your inputs that come in from your low voltage control. All right, so on the bottom of our units, they got a little small base on them already, but something that I like to make note of when you're putting these units out there, especially on the air conditioners, I would at least put ISO pads or something underneath them. They're super quiet overall, but transmission of that compressor sound can go right through the pad and right through the line set rather easily if we don't put some kind of isolation under it. The biggest note about the Elite series, when you look underneath, you see the circle holes in the bottom of that little base right there. That works really well using 2-inch male adapters and female adapters, and you can screw them together and you can make kind of like leveling legs, and that 2-inch adapter just kind of pops right up in the bottom of that plastic to hold it in place. So it's kind of a way to level it, also to use a pump up type situation as well. I know some of the times that might be more costly to do than maybe a standard pump up, but it works really well as far as leveling a pad that's poured and you can't really get back to it or something. Here's a look of an installation of a unit. This is a good looking installation. So many times I see pictures up, no disconnects and stuff on them. We actually have a disconnect on this one, so good job. I just want to show you the pad is a little bit of an oblong pad. You can use, of course, a standard pad with it, but we do have a pad that fits our unit itself. All right, so when we start talking about non-communicating controls, there's a couple things that's a little different about our control board inside of our units and our furnaces too. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that today, and then we'll expand more into it in the service class tomorrow. Standard, R, common, and G. G on our air handlers and on most of our furnaces is not a 100% air volume call like a traditional system where you're going to have an input from Y or Y2, and then you'll have a G call to turn your fan on at cooling speed. That's not the case with our equipment. So with a fan on call or a low air distribution call, I like to call it, you're going to run anywhere. Standard on an air handler is going to be about 50% air volume compared to what it normally is, and it's going to be 50% of your cooling max rate. And then our furnaces will go all the way down to about 28% on the lower end based on the dip switch setting. Now that feature's there for a couple reasons. One, with indoor air quality being what it is today, and even probably you guys can attest to this here in the past month, I'm sure you've gotten more questions or more people are open to listening about indoor air quality options that you may have to offer them in their home today. But it allows you to circulate air inside the house without a full volume of blasting cold air, like in the wintertime, a heat pump. If we run, let's say a 3-ton, run 1200 CFM every time we wanted to circulate air inside the home, you're going to get a drafty feeling. So it allows you to run a lower air volume based on that for, IAQ products. So that's something that you should utilize. Standard Y1, Y2 inputs. O signal is normal. I want you to pay attention though inside the screen that on that little 5 tab right there that R and O are manually jumpered from the factory to be energized. Okay, now that's a little weird, and I'm going to kind of try to explain why we do that. Believe it or not, most of our air handlers are put in applications with cooling only. Maybe a strip heat or something like that. We have a huge market in the South, farther south down in Florida and stuff, and they use a lot of air handlers, straight electric cooling with straight electric heat. And so with that, we trigger, because the G call is not a full 100% air volume, we trigger through the O signal saying, hey, we're running cooling. Okay, so a Y1 or a Y2 input along with an O signifies we're in cooling mode, and that should be our max volume rate. So if we're not running a heat pump, then we have to tell the board, hey, I need to be running in max volume rate. So that's a jumper that your team will have to cut almost every time, because they're going to be installing heat pumps and not straight cooling units. Also, you'll notice right beside it, the number 6 coming up to the DS, that's a dehumidification mode that allows the blower to ramp down about 30% off the 100% air volume once it gets to running. And what that does is it allows it to send a signal for dehumidification, and it's an enhanced dehumidification, very similar to some of your others that's out there in other manufacturers as far as slowing the blower down, getting the coil cooler, to extract more moisture during that given cycle. That's really the ultimate goal. It takes about 8 to 10 minutes to really get this refrigerant up to speed, and sometimes that's all the system's going to run, 8 to 10 minutes. So we want to try to get a maximum effect during run cycle when we're not running at 95 or 100 degrees outside. That jumper comes also energized from the factory. What you do is if you use one of our M30 stats or 75 or the E30 stat, that the D signal from the stat comes in, and it actually removes signal from the board saying we want dehumidification. So for non-dehumidification, it's energized, and that's why that jumper's there. So that's a little different. Most of the time, we're going to send a signal to tell it to do something. We're actually removing a signal off of that board, that air handler, to tell it to go in dehumidification mode. So if you utilize that feature, just be sure to cut that. Also, with our humiditrol system, our enhanced dehumidification system that we have an accessory that goes on, it also controls that as well. W1, W2, and W3 comes with a jumper on them. If you utilize any of the tabs on that, it's going to energize just fine through your heater kit, but you can single them out as needed. And then also, if you utilize any kind of Harmony 3 zoning or system, it has a DAT sensor that actually goes into the airstream. And when you remove that jumper, the DAT sensor will actually control the air volume and control and trickle on the amount of heaters as needed to maintain a minimum of 100 degrees. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about clearances here. This is a 4-foot minimum clearance over top of the unit. I had someone say, well, so I can put a roof over it. No, what that is going to be a 4-foot minimum clearance to an eave overhang. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. 4 foot's not that much either. So those people that have them up in the air on the side of their house and stuff, if you go up in Canada and up north somewhere, they're going to have them on big stilts and on platforms on the side of their house. We don't necessarily do that in our market, but that's the reason for that. Minimum spacing on the left is 2 foot. That's the bare minimum, in my opinion. 30 inches is even better. I know sometimes we get into pads, 10, 12 foot long because they got 2, 3 condensers on them. And you want to make sure that you got plenty of room. But this becomes very imperative when you start running very low RPMs on your fans and you're running at low stage, that heat doesn't get discharged and moved away from the equipment area as easily because the fan is not turning fast enough to throw it higher in the air and get it out away from the unit. So it tends to linger, and it actually gets worse if you have everything close together with a low 2-stage capacity or a variable capacity units. We touched on this already. We charge for 15-foot line sets. Standard line sets, 2-ton is 3/8 and 3/4. 3 and 4 ton is 3/8 and 7/8. And there again, 5-ton is 3/8 an inch and an eighth. You can run a 5-ton on 7/8 at certain applications, and it's more detailed inside the book that I have also attached to this webinar here that you can download, the service manual and the installation manual on that. There again, we've got the phone number that if you think you're in a situation where you're just not sure what it's going to do, please call them. Call me, Andrew, anyone of us at Lennox. We're here to help. Make sure that you get the right information. Factory charge, again, we talked about this the other day, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through it. Factory charge is located on the outdoor unit, plus your line set, plus any additional charge for the indoor coil size, and then you can adjust your charge based on that. If your team measures the line set and knows exactly what that liquid line is, and they follow our charts, just about every time you're going to be dead on. Hardly ever do you have to make any adjustments. Your subcool adjustment is very, very minimal. 2 or 3 ounces can adjust that subcool number real quickly. So that's really something to fine tune in. But you will function and operate until you can get a startup tech or someone out there to take a look at it and verify. And that's something you can do also during a maintenance. A lot of times, most of my dealers do, provide a free maintenance package with the first year or 2 years or something like that. And that's really what you're there to check, make sure everything got installed right and everything's working properly. Excuse me. Allowances for bends. This is something that's in our manual. When you start looking at hard 90s and stuff, that does make a difference as far as how they adjust for the line set length. I'm a big fan of no sweat 90s if we can do it. There's a lot of great tubing benders out there that do inside and outside, and Hilmar makes some really nice tools now compared to some of the stuff that I used back in the day, the big lever arm pulls and stuff like that. But you can run a lot of times line sets with no joints in it. And I'm a big fan of that just because, the less joints, less chance for leaks, right? So tubing benders, you have to not have to worry about any equivalent length allowances added to the chart. With a hard 90, you do. So you definitely refer back to the chart if you do that from that standpoint. The next thing I want to talk about real quick is just line sets in general. One of the hardest things that I have to do is go out on a customer's home and show up on a site visit with a dealer to try to locate noise going through the system. Vibration, pulsating noise, things like that. It's so crucial this day and time, especially with variable capacity equipment. I know I keep bringing that up, but understand that compressor's not pumping at 100% volume, and so it's running at a much lower rate along with our two-stage product we're talking about here today. And every time that refrigerant hits a bump inside the line set and it's not full, it just kind of does somersaults. So visualize a gymnast or something doing somersaults down the road or something like that. And that's kind of what happens with the refrigerant. It starts splashing around and moving inside there because the lines are not full capacity because you're not pumping full capacity. And every time it hits a little burr or hits a corner or something like that, it just turbulates. And that's where we get noise complaints and problems. So please be sure to deburr the copper. Every time you cut, even though you think you're doing a really good job, it indents the copper on the end every time you cut. Clean that off good. Hilmar, and I'm not getting endorsed by Hilmar or anything like that, but they've just got some really cool tools that wasn't available to me when I was on the dealer side. But they've got some swedging tools, a couple pumps of the swedger and stuff. It'll bring copper right back to OEM size. Just little attention to details on this will make all the difference in the world of a noise problem. You may install 10 units and never have a problem, but that one unit will be a thorn in your tail. So just please be aware of that. That's always good business practices when you're out there, your team's out there installing. Flow nitrogen when brazing, it's imperative that you do that. Excuse me. Flowing nitrogen. I'm so big on that. That's another thing, a question. I talked about the filter dryers breaking in the system. I talk about this every chance I get. I think this is something that is under utilized in our market, in our industry. So many people know what flowing nitrogen is, but it takes a little more time. And it's a little more challenging at times. And people say, well, I didn't have that, or I didn't have this, or whatever. Just a quick story. I was out on a site visit one time with a dealer, and the young man looked at me and I said, you going to flow nitrogen? He looked at me square in the eyes and said, you want me to do that while you're here? I said, no, sir. I want you to do that anytime I'm not here or anytime that you're breaking into a system like this. So the long and short, he didn't have it with him. He had to call somebody to get it because I didn't let him move forward. So anyway, I'm a particular to attention to details. I think it's important that we run systems and processes, and that's one of them. So if you're not doing that today, please start doing that. Okay, I can't tell you how important that is. Removing valve cores is very important, getting the system down. This day and time with vacuum pumps, we got vacuum pumps that are 12 and 15 CFM pumps. It's unbelievable how low they can go. And I have training classes from time to time, and I'll get technicians come up and say, man, I got a vacuum pump that'll go down to 200 microns. I said, that's great. but it's taking him a while to get there, you know. And so he bought this really expensive pump, and he's taking him a while to get there. And he's like, wanted to ask me about hoses and things like that. So a couple things that I want to talk about. You know, I used to use, and I'm a firm believer in this, use a separate set of gauges for service versus repairs. I had a set of gauges that was strictly for vacuums and things like that. I didn't do any charging through them whatsoever, other than maybe dumping the charge in from that standpoint. But they wasn't really set for charging. The gauges are just there. I don't care if there's even any dials on them. You can put caps on them. If you got some old set of gauges, the dials are about shot on them, analog gauges and stuff, because they're really there. I'm looking at the micron gauge, but removing your valve cores is imperative. It speeds the process up tremendously. And this picture here showing, this is in all of our install manuals. It's a good diagram kind of showing you how to work things here. I use this tool right here. This is another tool by Hilmar. I used one very similar to this. It's a vacuum rated type of tool, that service tool that you can remove the valve cores, but it's vacuum rated. I used one. Yellow Jacket makes one. I'm sure there's some other manufacturers as well. That was just one that I used regular. This is an Apcon here, but Hilmar makes one that looks almost out just like it. So just make sure your tool is vacuum rated when you're running through the system. But I used one on both the liquid line and the suction line to remove those cores. And then on the yellow hose, I told you that I kept a special set of gauges just for, you know, pulling vacuums. In the very end of these hoses, there's a little place in there to depress the valve cores, little needles in the end of them. Take you a small needle nose and remove that out of there. That takes a standard 3/8 hose and opens it up tremendously. Usually on one end, like the yellow hose, on one end you're going to have an open end that attaches to the gauge, and the other side has one on it, and the yellow hose on the other end should be open. But on like your blue and red hose, the one that attaches to the gauge will be open, but the other end has that little needle point to depress that valve core. So if you don't have that in there, that's just a blockage point is all it is. So I remove those completely out. If you do that, that's going to speed your process up so much that it's unbelievable. All right, so here's the chart, and we keep talking about moisture and evacuation and the proper process and stuff. This kind of gives you a checkpoint here of what we're looking at. So leak in the system, you know, with excessive moisture, anything above 2,000 microns, if it rises up to about 1,900 microns, you still got moisture in the system. If it rises up and stops, then more than likely you've got some kind of contaminants in the system. Now, I understand that pulling a vacuum will remove moisture, and it will. The whole dehydration process is we pull it down deep and it will run. The problem is an hour or two of pulling them with a vacuum pump, I don't care how big it is, will not completely dry a system out. So if you have one with excessive moisture, it's open to the atmosphere for any length of time during your repair or even new install that's had refrigerant flowing through it before, and you clean the line set, you know, there's still some moisture in the system and some contaminants that'll have to come out. If you allowed the vacuum pump to run a long enough time, sure, it will dry it out. But the problem is a couple hours or an hour. Most technicians tell me when I kind of quiz them that they're pulling a vacuum for less than an hour, and that's fine. So I would always introduce dry nitrogen to the system. One, that's going to leak test before you pull a vacuum, so you're not wasting your time pulling a vacuum, and 30 minutes you look at it and go, crap, it's not coming down, or it's not doing this, or it's not doing that, and you turn it off and it comes up. So leak testing with nitrogen, about 450 pounds, 500 pounds of pressure is very important. And then the next thing that it does, it also absorbs moisture and contaminants and stuff. So when you get rid of that, blow that off down to about 25 psi, you're removing moisture with it. So that's really good. That's, you know, you can do that 2 or 3 times, triple evacuation mode. So it's very important that we do that. Good leak-free system. You're ensuring the customer's getting what they're paid for. All right, we're going to talk just real quick. We're going to shift gears to the aluminum air handler. I just want to touch on a couple things on it. The CBA38 air handler is our quantum aluminum coil air handler. It's really nice looking air handler. It is communicating air handler as well. But the thing is it's got factory installed bulb on that TXV there. I want to make you aware of that. That still don't mean though that you don't have to protect that. Okay, so when you're brazing that in, make sure that you protect that, whether you remove it or you put some rags on it or some heat absorption paste that you can put on there for sweating that joint. That heat will travel right to where that aluminum and copper meet. That bulb is there. It's sensitive to heat, of course, because it has refrigerant in it, and you just have to protect it. Of course, as you see below, in the corner here, let me click the next picture. You'll see a better picture of the coil here. You'll see a better picture of this coil. Now, the TXV is located underneath. It is factory mounted, so you don't have to worry about doing anything. Some of our previous versions of this, the copper version, will have the bulb mounted on a different type of rail, and that bulb was designed to be located outside outside the cabinet after the unit was sweated in and put on the suction line and insulated at that time. This one right here, though, is factory mounted. We've got a good smooth location for it. It's located at the right position. Like I said, you just got to protect it from the heat. And then down below on the liquid line, again, you've got that expansion valve that you need to protect from the heat. That's very sensitive to it as well. So make sure that, we take attention to detail on that. All right, on the CBA 38 MV, currently right now, we don't have an auto detect feature in our board. So you have to push the button on the board and an H will come up. And when it does, you push it again, it will blink, and you push it again, and it will actually go out and auto sense how much heat you have in this system. So it's actually going to look through the resistance of that heater through those coils, because we run 24-volt AC coils on here. We're going to actually see that resistance through that coil, and it will actually count 1, 2, 3, 4 stages depending on how big the heater kit is. You only have to do this once on initial startup, but I bring this up because I get phone calls from time to time that, hey, they bought a really nice system and the technician or the installer forgot to do it for whatever reason. Maybe you didn't know it needed to be done, or two, just forgot to do it. And the system's worked really well till it gets about 15 or 20 degrees, and they notice, hey, we ain't got no heat for defrost to compensate this unit. So that's something that comes about quite regular. So just make sure that your team does that. In the very near future, originally before coronavirus and everything that's going on right now, we had plans to release it this year. We've got a new board that will actually auto sense that, and you won't have to worry about it. But right now, I just want to make you aware of it. It's a simple process, takes about 20 seconds. You push the button, it goes in auto sense, and it exits it out of that mode automatically. All right, so we're almost done with the presentation. I try to keep it right around 45 minutes this morning so we have some time for questions and stuff. We're going to enter this kind of startup mode. And just a few things that I'm passionate about is making sure that you check the crankcase heater on the systems that have crankcase heaters. They're there for a reason. That's kind of the lifeblood of protecting that compressor. So during a tune-up process, as a technician, you're sitting there waiting on your pressures to come up and things like that. Just ohm it out, make sure it's working, that it's fine. Of course, if it's below 50 degrees, it will be on. If it's not, just make sure the resistance through it is correct, and that the sensor is attached to the line. Vibration on these units over time. When you're checking a system for tune-up, make sure that copper lines are not touching anywhere. No wires are touching, rubbing against sheet metal or rubbing against copper, because it will rub a hole in it and pop a fuse and things like that, and you'll get a dead short on your low voltage. So those are things I think are very, very important when you're doing a startup. Just visually look at the system and see, is that going to be a problem or not? And if it becomes something you're seeing on a recurring basis, maybe we got someone on the assembly line that just is not doing it right. Okay, and give me a call, give me the serial number. We can actually dial down what shift actually put that in, and actually all the way down to what employee actually worked on that unit. So then the very next thing that I'm so passionate about is airflow. I think this is so underutilized in the marketplace, and the company that does this can outperform so much more in the marketplace compared to anybody else. Attention to details, that type of thing. Then after the airflow is verified and checked and set, because to me there's no such thing as factory default anymore. You got to verify airflow. Every unit in every home is different. Every application is different. So, ductwork with variable capacity blowers, variable speed motors, and with X13 type constant torque motors, those are all based on back pressure. So they're going to ramp up and ramp down just a little bit based on the duct design that they're put in. And there's no two pieces of ductwork and no two homes designed exactly the same. So you got to adjust airflow. Then after you get your airflow set and verified, then you can check charge. Because all your charge charts are based on a certain airflow. So if it's off, so is the charts. They won't be correct and you won't get them there. Or if you do get them there, you're either sacrificing the amount of refrigerant in the system by too much or too little. And then another kind of pet peeve of mine is, unless it's just absolutely detrimental to the unit to where you cannot check it, check all modes of operation. I don't know how many times I get phone calls and says, hey, we put a furnace in back in June and now here it is October. It's not started and it's not working. Must be a DOA. I said, well, did you check it? No. Well, whose fault is that? Mine or yours? And so unless it's just a reason that you cannot check it just to fire it off and make sure that it's working, check all modes of operation. And then one more tidbit for the service techs or anybody in the room, I'm a big fan of making sure that unit starts when you leave, right? 5 minutes is a long time when you're standing there looking at it, when you're gathering your tools and you're putting stuff away in your van. You can't, if you hear that system start, and we've all got a trained ear, I can hear them 3 houses down here on my street where I live at. We've listened to them for years. I can hear a compressor start and everything else. But if I hear it start, then I know I've got my disconnect in, right? And that's happened before. How many of y'all, I'm raising my hand right now, have walked away from a job and left the disconnect out, right? And you get a phone call, the technician's 20 miles down the road, and dispatch gets a phone call. Hey, my unit was working fine until your tech left. Now it's starting to get hot. What's going on? You get back out there and the disconnect is not in. So that's another one that I'm very passionate about. The last one that I'm going to kind of touch on here before we get done is talking about condensate drain lines. I'm going to raise my hand again because I've done this, the little giant pumps, condensate pumps. How many of y'all forgot to pull the little cardboard out of there on the float switch? Guess what? It won't work. I've done it myself, so I'm a big fan of that too. Pour a couple bottles of water, 2 20-ounce bottles of water will fill it up and make it pump at least once. And at least it's working. So just a few extra things to do while you're tidying up, you're getting all your numbers together. Usually you got 2-man crew working on the job. Maybe one guy's going to be putting tools and stuff away and just checking for leaks and things like that. You guys do plumbing as well, so I know you know the importance of water and the damage it can cause. So just pay attention to that as well. And then whether in the back of all of our books here, we have a startup sheet. Whether you utilize my startup sheet or a startup sheet, something should be utilized. Someone from the company should do a startup on this unit. So you got documentation on that it was verified, what the temperatures and pressures was, the voltage and everything the day the system was installed. This is something that I'm starting to ask for more on a regular basis. This proves to me that you did your job in the field and things like that. So many times I get a pushback on it. Well, I didn't do that. Load calculations is another thing that I'm big on. You want me to help you with a situation that you have, I need to make sure it's installed properly. And so I just need a few things. You should be doing that anyway. And I know speaking with the sales team that they do pay attention to that and do make that a mandatory process. So kudos to you for that. All right, guys, that's really all I have. I'm going to open it up for questions. I tried to make it a little quicker this morning instead of like we did a couple mornings ago. And then tomorrow morning, we're going to get together and we'll do a technical class, a lot more technical about it, voltages and things like that on compressors. We'll go through some of the codes that you might run across and what they mean, and we'll dive into it. So any questions this morning?
Yeah, this is John. I got a quick question. If I go out there and I sell a unit, say a 25C or whatever, and we don't have it in our warehouse, how fast, excuse me, how fast can I get it in Huntsville?
Okay, that's a question I'm going to ask. Andrew, are you on?
Yeah, okay. Can you repeat that? I started here, but I think I missed it. But your question was basically how fast can I get equipment that's not sitting in your warehouse? Is that accurate?
That is exactly correct. especially the higher end systems, because they tend to, it's my experience, they have a little bit more lead time on those. But I just want to see, where your stuff is at and how fast I can get it in Huntsville.
Andrew?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So what was your question? I'm sorry, my computer must have lost connection there for a second. Was your question how quickly can we get a unit that's not in your warehouse currently?
Yes.
Okay, so great question. So at our warehouse that's down in Huntsville, it's about 10 to 12 minutes from you. Right now, we have every possible system in stock that you would sell. Okay, so that's number one that you should be confident in. So if you need something, we have it for you. The second thing is, if we did not have something, say you just happened to sell 3, for example, I don't know, XP25 5 tons, right? Something that's not as common, we get resupplied out of Atlanta, which is obviously not too far. Any orders that come in before 1 o'clock, we can direct ship to you. You'll have it next day, or would come in our resupply. So we will be all over from a distribution standpoint, making sure that you guys have that equipment when you need it to install it.
That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good question.
And this is Tom. Just to give you an idea, Atlanta Regional Distribution Center is, I believe it's around 400,000 square feet. So, if Huntsville has 3 of something, Atlanta has 19. I mean, the scale of it is pretty immense. So Andrew's right. It's just very likely that you're going to be able to get what you need next day, even if it wasn't right at the store in Huntsville.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I'll take that. Well, crickets as being a no.
Hey, I'm sorry. I do have another question. Sorry.
Sure. Go ahead.
On your 90% furnaces, what is the size of the PVC pipe that y'all use?
2-inch coming off the furnace itself, and then we'll swell up to 3-inch in certain applications. So generally anything 100,000, 110,000 and up, we're going to go to the 3-inch venting size.
Okay. So it comes off 2-inch and then you bump it up to 3-inch.
Correct.
Now, when it penetrates a wall or something, is there a cap you put on it, or you just angle it down and call it a day?
There's some concentric vent kits that we sell, and I'm sure you've seen them with other manufacturers. Are nice and slick. I'm a big fan of them just because they got a cone outside and
Right.
they look pretty good. We do offer that as well, a concentric vent that goes through and does that. You can do just a straight pipe out with a 90 on it or something other like that. You can't use any kind of screens or anything like that on it because of the, moisture can freeze in that screen. However, I've got dealers that says, well, I don't get cold enough to worry about that. I go ahead and do it. One of these days they'll get real cold and they'll wish they hadn't done it. But anyway, so during maintenance with a 90% gas furnace, if you had something like that for whatever, those chimney sweep birds, they love to get in a horizontal vented type of flue. I always like to include that kind of in a maintenance package to go out there and just cover that up and then open it back up for the winter, that type of thing. It works really well, and that's another cheap added benefit that you can have to your maintenance package. And I know you guys are big on maintenance and how important it is, but that's just another thing that you can kind of do for the customer. Just a little tidbit there in case you guys don't do that currently.
No, that's good stuff. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And
Anyone else?
one thing I will say, because I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but just so you know, from a split heat pump application standpoint, right now, you guys have every tonnage for XP20, XP16, and our base 14 SEER ML14 XP1, as well as their air handlers that will go with them. So right now, you have every tonnage and every system sitting in your warehouse. Just FYI.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate you guys being able to get them to us really fast.